So start a new program, what do we do? Right? So we go to new, right, and project, but it'll, when you load in, it'll give you the first project. And this is our project tree over here. So this is very similar to the project tree that we had in PLC. So once we get our project tree up, then what you're going to do is come down here and double click on main OB1. It's what they call their object blocks. So this would be the same as ladder 2 inside RS Logic 500. Once you do that, and we're going to talk about some other stuff later on that we're going to have to set up. What you can do is hit the little arrow here, and it'll move the project tree over, so it gives you more room for what we're looking at, right? And also, this is the instruction set over here, and it's got a very elaborate, there you go, instruction set. What we like up here is this is your favorites bar of what you use most often. So we're going to use a lot on our bit instructions. We're going to use the latch and unlatch feature, and I think y'all did that in PLC 1. They call it set and reset. They use it extensively in here. So any other instruction that you want to add, you can just find it in the instruction tree, and you can just drag it over to your favorite bar, your favorites, and it'll be added to you. So now you don't have to go over in the instruction and find those instructions anymore. That makes sense? If you don't want something up here, then you can just right-click on it and say what? Remove. So if they put something up there you don't use. Now by default we get the normally open or the examine if closed, right? And then we also get an examine if open. And then we've got our a coil, right, that we can use, that we can assign as either a internal coil or an external coil. And you'll find out, and this will give you a real feel of the way large programs are written, a lot of the coils are internal coils. So the only time you'll ever use an output is when you need to control something outside of the PLC. Another real neat feature is this little guy right here that's got the question mark on it. So what this is just a dummy thing, and what you can do is once you learn the little mnemonics for all the different instructions over here, you can come up here and turn this on, and if you want it on lay timer, you just type in the mnemonic for it, and now you don't have to find it within sight. You don't have to find it inside the instruction tree, and that's a really neat feature. And here, what it does is, remember, this guy does not assign memory until you try to use something. So originally, there's nothing assigned to timers. So RS Logic 500, you have already memory that specifies strictly for what? Timers. And there's 256 of them, 0 through 255. That memory is already taken care of. Those blocks are already set up. So a lot of fixed PLCs won't let you add any more types of memory blocks inside there. What we're doing now with our new PLCs, even the Compact Logics, which are the new versions of Allen Bradley's, is they don't hardly assign memory to anything, and they allow you to assign memory, right? So this sets up what we call blocks, but right here is where we would give it a name. So, you know, if we wanted to call it, instead of using a default name, if we wanted to call it timer 1, then that's where we could set it up. And then what it'll do is it'll go out there and it'll find a data block, and it'll set that up for you, but only for that timer, right? You understand? For that timer. Well, that would prevent me from going over here and trying to find it in this mess over here. So if I use the timers every once in a while, and so it's kind of like back in PLC 1, I think I showed you brought up that big mnemonic, the big palette, where you could choose the instruction and try to go through over there. Yeah, you just place it in there and then type. Yeah, any of the functions that's within those major functions, you can just start typing in the mnemonic that represents it, and it'll come up, and you can assign it that way instead of finding it over here, right? Of course, it's pretty obvious where the timers is, But if you ever went through those menus inside Allen Bradley, especially in advanced PLCs, you'll notice that some of the places that they place the instruction inside the instruction list just kind of don't make sense. So according to this, like compression operations, I might use one, but the instruction I'm trying to use might not. I might think of it not being inside there. So what you'd end up doing is you'd end up doing what? Going through all these things, trying to find those things, right? So you got two options. You can do what? If you're going to use it all the time, you need to do what? You need to drag it up to your favorites. If you're not going to use it, but you're going to use it every once in a while, after a while, once you've been programming these things for a long time, you would know just about all the mnemonics for your instructions anyway. So instead of even using that instruction list, you just start typing it in. You bring that block down and just do what? Just start typing it in, and you can choose, and it'll put you in the right category right off the bat. Now, to delete things, we do it exactly the same way. We just highlight them and hit the what? Just hit the delete key. So that's basically the same way that we did it inside of RS Logic 500. This up here, this is where we use this one to do what. And by the way, it has the hover feature, which means if you want to see what any icon does, you just hold it up there, and it'll come up here, and eventually a little yellow box will pop up telling you what it does. Right? Does that make sense? So I've used this to download, and what does download mean in PLCs? To the PLC. This would be what I would use to upload, which means we would take a program that's in the PLC and bring it back into the thing. Of course, this is a brand new PLC, so there's nothing up there that I can download, right? We use this a lot too. So what do we do with this one? This is where we can switch the PLC from what? Online to offline, right? This is where we can switch it. We can start the CPU. We can stop the CPU here. So this CPU here does not have a switch on the front. A lot of your bigger PLCs will have a switch on the front that you can switch it out of program, right, and put it on run, and then you take the key out, and anybody can't come over there and say, oh, there's a key, let's see what it does, right, and maybe screw you up. These mostly small PLCs, you switch it between run and program and all that from the remote terminal or from the remote computer. What else? This right here, we would use these over here on the left. What do we do with these? Can you see when I hover over it? Yeah, this is a net. So Siemens don't call them rungs; they call them what? Networks. So if we wanted to insert a network, we might end up with a bunch of garbage networks where we delete stuff. So what we do is, if you wanted to get rid of a network, you would highlight the L1 rail, and then you'd come up here and do what? Choose what? Remove, right? You okay? That makes sense? Anything else right now? I'm sure things will pop up, but I think this is really neat. I like this. I like this little catch-all little box that you can pull down and not go searching through all these different menus over here that we try to find. I don't know, in RS Lite, when you get into advanced PLCs, you'll appreciate that. In intro to PLCs, all we went through was counters, and those two are in the first two. In those tabs are already up there, right? In advanced PLCs, we'll get into those other tabs, and you're constantly having to do what? Tab over and find them. So I really like that feature too. So I like that auto detect feature. That'll save you, right? Where it goes out and literally finds how you're configured. And I really like these features right here. Okay, anything else? Okay, so what we're going to do once you get it wired up is we're just going to set up a basic program where we'll use one of our inputs. So we'll use one of our inputs as we'll just bring out a normally open input, right? And then what we'll do, then we'll assign that switch to that output. So that way it'll be obvious. If you assign input 0 to output 0, then you can flip the switch. And by the way, this is so by default when we another thing I don't really like is that on the Allen Bradley PLC, when you go to run mode, Allen Bradley RS Logic automatically goes into the monitor mode where it actually shows you the contacts that are active. To do this on this one, you have to use these little set of eyeglasses. So you switch on that, and then that'll switch it over to the monitor mode so you can actually come up and see the flow. I like the Siemens because it shows the flow through the entire Logic. If you remember, RS Logic 500 only highlights the devices that are true, and it don't show you the whole flow. I like that. And notice another thing they decided not to put over here is what? They didn't put L2. So they don't put L2. Siemens decided that we understand that it's there, right? You understand? So why put it? So all our wiring is basically done between L1 and the load anyway. And so since we don't have any magnetic motor starters inside the PLC, those would be out. That would be outside. Then there's really no need to show L2 anyway, because there's nothing technically connected to L2 except the loads, right? Except outputs. Okay. All right. Any more questions? We okay? So we'll come up here. Some of these things we'll use. Some of the things we don't use. This right here is pretty obvious. I'm sorry. This is where we come in and we type comments about the rung. Here we can type comments about the ladder, the entire ladder, right? Anything else? This is where we can, if we get an error, we can actually allow it to take us and find the errors inside the ladder. This becomes very, very important if you're in an extremely large program, right? You understand? I think what RS Logic's 500 does is it pops up a box in the box and tells you what rung the error is in. This right here, you can just click on that and it would take you to the first error, and you click on it again, it would take you to the second, right? You understand that? And of course, this one right here would take you back up through it. So that would be like the previous and next button that you see a lot. Inconsistent blocks, go to read-write access. I have to figure these out, guys. So I think that's all. So this will just close up all your networks, and this right here will open up the networks. And why you need that, I don't know. And I have to figure these out too. So we okay? All right, guys. So y'all see what y'all going to do. So you're going to have a lot of networks. You're going to have 16 networks, and what we'll do is we'll have what? We'll have one of our inputs. And how do they address inputs? So we start off with I, right? Everybody okay? And then we do what? Put the word number, or the byte number, excuse me. And then we put a what? A dot, and then we put a bit, which is totally different than Allen Bradley. Allen Bradley, when we use the dot, we specify a word. What we do on this one is I'll give y'all a list. If I wanted to specify a whole byte of inputs, I would use IB, which is pretty straightforward, right? If I wanted to specify a whole word, I would use what? IW, right? And that's the same thing true on outputs. So we'd start off with input 0, right? Then what? Dot 0. Now, when you get past the number of inputs, remember your module is out at your module is out at what word? Word 8. Yeah, your extra module is out at word 8, right? You remember that? Good. And what's it going to ask you for when you come up and enter that by itself? It's going to ask you for a what? It's going to assign it a what? A tag. But you need to start getting used to assigning these tags yourself. And like I say, when we get into, we'll go over the Allen Bradley programs. We'll explain some of the stuff that Allen Bradley did, or Festo did, not Allen Bradley, what Festo did when they wrote the programs for the line. And then we'll see what we're going to do to implement that with the TIA portal. Are we okay? All right, guys, y'all go at it. Y'all got y'all's wired yet? Y'all still working? Almost.